myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not.
Good evening, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Ross Gregory joins us tonight. We had Super Matt and Gibbo a little bit earlier. How are you, Ross?
I'm good, thanks, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you, mate. Good to see you. And I can see the chat warming up already with questions about transfers. We will come to that a little bit later. We do want to get Ross's review of the season, which is what we are doing this week on all of the shows. So without further ado, Ross, I'm going to go for your best signing, mate.
Best signing for me, and it's a tricky one because obviously Joe Willock signed in the summer. It was the only real arrival of any note. The January transfer window was, as we all know, transformative. Dan Burn came in, excellent, shored up that defence. Matt Targett left back, superb. Chris Wood chipped in with a couple of really important goals and was much needed in that role with Callum Wilson. Now, Bruno, without a doubt, is the standout signing of that January transfer window, and probably the January, not just for Newcastle, probably across the Premier League, an absolutely outstanding signing and a kind of landmark signing as well, a kind of flag in the sand, if you like, for Bruno. But for me, the signing of the season was Kieran Trippier. I think that was a statement, that you can sign a current England international, these leadership qualities, where he's come from, what he's done. That when Newcastle brought somebody like Kieran Trippier into the club, and I think that set the bar. It made other clubs sit up and take a little bit of notice. It made other players who were maybe thinking about coming or whatever looking and say, "Oh, hang on a second, Kieran Trippier's come in." And he just raised the standards on the pitch. He raised them in the changing rooms. I think we look back in a few years' time as that potentially being one of the key signings of Newcastle United's current history. I kind of liken it a little bit to when you're old enough as well, Steve, as I am to remember the Barry Venison signing in under Kevin Keegan, Paul Brace, all them sorts of players when they came in. I think Kieran Trippier will not necessarily the highest profile or the most glamorous, but just a really, really top professional. So yeah, signing of the season for me, Kieran Trippier.
Yeah, I can understand why as well. Most improved player in the season.
Yeah, there's another few contenders, isn't there?
Yeah, there is for each category, bizarrely.
There is, and if you looked at it, I think you've got to almost break the season down into two. You've got your first half and your second half. Second half, there's been so many players who, under Eddie Howe, he's improved so many players. He's improved. You can see Emil Kraft's improved hugely. Joe Linton's I suppose the obvious choice of how much he's improved across the full season, not just kind of since Christmas. I do think someone like John Joe Shelby probably deserves a shout as well for improved. We all know he's got quality, but he's never been able to put it together consistently. Ryan Fraser, under Howe as well, is played a lot better than what I thought he was going to play. So I'm going to go Ryan Fraser as the most improved player, because I wasn't quite sure if he would have a future at Newcastle. I wasn't quite sure how he would fit in. I wasn't quite sure about his application or his confidence or the whole package. I just wasn't sure. So for me, I'm going to say Ryan Fraser is the most improved.
Okay. Best match or performance of the season?
Again, it's probably got to come in the second half of the season, and again, the obvious one is Arsenal. That second last game of the season, the final home game, and I know Arsenal weren't at their best. I know Arsenal didn't play anywhere near the level that had got them into Champions League contention. But Newcastle from the first whistle to the last whistle bossed that game, absolutely bossed that game. And that's not an easy thing to do in the Premier League against any team. It's not an easy thing to do against Burnley or against Norwich to kind of put in a 90-minute performance like that. Never mind against a team who are going for Champions League qualification, who've got a lot of talented players in their team. The whole atmosphere around the ground and around the game kind of fed into that and made it the spectacle, and made it the atmosphere and the environment and the whole mood of the game. That was all fed into from the crowd and everything else like that, with war flags. But in terms of pure performance, I don't think you can look past that Arsenal game just for passion, ability, dominance, and because of who it was. We hadn't beaten a top six club in the good run that we'd had. Put in some really good performances and really good results, but hadn't beaten a top six club. So I think that has to go down for me as the best performance of the season.
Okay, what was your moment of the season, Ross? I mean, obviously, it doesn't have to be football related. It doesn't have to be on the pitch. It could be off the pitch. What was your overall moment of last season?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this one, Steve. I mean, I've thought about this one quite a bit, and the takeover again. It's such a transformative moment in the season, in the club's history, potentially. That is an overall moment, and I know most people will say that the takeover. So I know I'm not reinventing the wheel here, so to speak. It's fairly obvious. I'll move it on slightly from the takeover. So for me, even though it was a defeat, it was that first home game after the takeover against Spurs. So I don't get to all home games these days. I get to a few. I go to some in a work capacity. Go to some games in a fan capacity. I went to that one. I got tickets to that one because I wanted to go with my son. And we went up to the game, and funny enough, I bumped into you outside, Steve, if you remember. I bumped into you outside the Shearers bar, and we had a bit of an embrace and a bit chat. But walking up to the ground, got there very early as you did, got there around the place. You could just feel the buzz, you could feel the excitement, you could feel the happiness, you could feel the joy, everything that we haven't felt around Newcastle United for a decade, bar the odd game, the odd experience, the odd moment. And again, I don't like harking back all the time, but I think I mentioned it to you at the time. We go back to kind of it felt like what it was under them Keegan days, where the buzz around the ground about you felt you could take on the world as a football fan. You felt like the club was going somewhere and was positive. It was just an amazing feeling. And then that first kind of 15-20 minutes when Callum Wilson scored that opener after 2 minutes, the place was electric, absolutely bouncing. Obviously, it fell a little bit flat towards the end, which we shouldn't have really been surprised about, given the state that the team was in and everything else going around it with Steve Bruce and the whole atmosphere. But for that half an hour in the lead up to kickoff, and for that first 15 minutes after kickoff, I wasn't fortunate to be at the Arsenal game, but that was a moment for me. That was a real moment.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, mate. I know exactly what you mean. We've had a vast array. I'm sure we'll get a couple more tomorrow, and with me and Holly on Saturday. So keep tuning in. We'll give you our reviews of the season. Don't forget you can vote for your player of the season at NUFCmatters.com. We'll be announcing the winner of that tomorrow night. Okay, your goal of the season, Ross.
There's been some crackers, some real crackers. It's hard always to narrow it down, but I'll narrow it down to a handful that some of them which are just fantastic goals, but a couple which just mean a lot as well, just because of what they were. So I think it was Callum Wilson's goal against Palace. Acrobatic, great goal. Bruno's back heel on the volley on his debut against Southampton, great goal. But in terms of kind of moments, I would point to a couple of free kicks. John Joe Shelby's free kick against Leeds. Not the greatest free kick, kind of keeper spilled it in, but that was a must-win game, and it was a massive, massive goal. Kieran Trippier's goal against free kick against Everton. Again, just a massive, massive goal in the context of the season, in the context of Newcastle's fight for survival. And then also, I would also put in Bruno's last second winner against Leicester, just for the joy, the unbridled joy. And there's nothing like scoring a late goal like that. But I think for pure quality, I'll go for Bruno's little flick against Southampton. Just a moment of just absolute unbelievable skill and talent, and just on your debut to pull something like that out of the bag on a miserable night down on Southampton. To pull something like that out, you just start to know, wow, we've got a player here. We've got a real player on our hands here.
Yeah. Okay. And last but by no means least, your player of the season, Ross.
Yeah, this was probably the easiest out of the lot, Steve. Joelinton, without a shadow of a doubt. I've always had a soft spot for Joelinton, and I've taken a little bit of a battering amongst, sometimes on social media and sometimes within my friendship group as well about Joelinton, and I've always tried to defend him because I could see he was struggling, and he wasn't the player that fans hoped for and everybody hoped for when he first arrived. I always felt that that everything that went on, he never hid. He never go to Wolves a couple of seasons ago, and he was getting dogs abuse from the away fans there, and he was still grafting. But you could see his confidence was shot. I'm just chuffed from him about the turnaround that's come about, because his fitness record is superb. He's a big lad. He puts himself about, but he barely misses a game, barely misses a minute across the last 3 seasons or whatever it's been. And from the turnaround, his career in a different role, in a different position, one which he's never really played before, but looks like he's played all his life, I think is fantastic. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he kicks on next season. I think it's another big season for him because he's got to keep developing. But yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, I think it's the easiest choice of all for me is Joelinton as player this season.
Yeah, it's no surprise to hear Joelinton getting a mention again on someone else's selection. But thanks for taking the time to do that, Ross. And you can tell everyone is in suspense in the chat because there's that many questions coming in about the transfer situation, and we will turn our attention to that in a second. I just want to talk a little bit about Ukraine-Scotland last night, Ross. An emotional game for the Ukrainian team. Many of those players haven't played or kicked the ball in anger for months now because of the war that's taking place in their country. I know there was split loyalties a little bit on the panel last night because Stu really did want to see Scotland progress, and he felt like the weight of the chat was against him last night. I think a lot of people want Ukraine to win, but yeah, I mean, look, politics needs to be parked. It was all about the football, and Ukraine, they got the result, and they'll be the team that takes on Wales for a place in the World Cup finals.
And they were deservedly so. It wasn't, they didn't scrape through, and they didn't just get by almost on a sympathy vote. They were outstanding. They were the better team. Scotland froze a little bit, I think, but they weren't at the best. I've seen Scotland play a lot better, but Ukraine were outstanding and could have won by a comfortable margin in the end. Could have been, much more comfortable than 3-1. I thought the outstanding play on the pitch was Zinchenko, the Man City left back or left midfielder, depending on where he wants to play or what position he's played in. I've seen him linked with Newcastle over recent days and weeks. I thought he was outstanding on the night, and is obviously a really talented player. Funnily enough, I don't think he's one of those where when you look at him for Man City, you think, is he potentially a weak link? He's not quite up to their standards, but he was brilliant last night. Great for Ukraine, great for world football. It was the real kind of feel-good story, I suppose, for them to win last night. That the job's only half done for them. Obviously now they've got Wales on Sunday, which will be a real tricky one. But if Ukraine play anything like they did last night, then I think Wales will be in for a shock as well.
Yeah, I do as well. Looks very, very daunting that for Wales, but yeah, we will wait and see. Okay, we will move on to the transfer news. Chippers gets in first with his question about the goalkeeping situation at Newcastle United, and he asked, is there any more talk about Dean Henderson? I've been watching the journalists' tweets go out today, and a few of those ITK in the know accounts as well, and seeing what they're picking up from the various news sites around the world, and not so much keeper talk, more centre forward, midfield, and defenders talk today. But Dean Henderson being linked, we spoke about him on the show before, Ross. Any news that you've picked up on the grapevine over the last 7 days on Dean Henderson?
It's not moved on too much. There's still certainly an interest there in Newcastle monitoring the situation. It depends on, and I've spoken to people at both ends on this one. It depends who you speak to. So if you speak to people on the Manchester United side of things, on that end, then they'll say that the interest is a lot more concrete and further along, and there has been preliminary talks with between Newcastle and Henderson. You speak to people on the Newcastle side, and people are either closely involved with the club or who spoke to other people around Henderson's camp, and they say that it's not anywhere near that kind of stage, and that they just keep a kind of watching brief on the situation. I'm tempted, if I was being honest, I'm tempted to believe and go more strongly towards that there will be a deal pushed at some point in this summer. I do think it's something that Newcastle are interested in. I do think Henderson's somebody that Eddie Howe is very keen on. Man United have got their own issues at the minute, though. They've got a new manager coming in themselves, Eric Ten Hag. He's having to assess his squad and see what he wants to do with his players. He's got a lot of players going out already. You've seen over the last couple of days your Pogba's, your Matas, Lingard, all their contracts are up and they're all moving on. They've got half a dozen others as well. Cavani's and your Phil Jones and people of that ilk who are going to be moving on. So there's going to be a massive kind of revolving door of players at Man United at Old Trafford this summer. On the goalkeeper front, again, speaking to people around United, Henderson wants to be a number one. He was pushing for number one this time last year for United. He got COVID in the summer, and it halted his progress. And David De Gea came, just nailed that number one jersey. Henderson's got a real kind of, how can I put it nicely? He's got an ego, he's got a belief, he's got a self-confidence in himself that he is the best goalkeeper around, one of the best goalkeepers in the country. He thoroughly thinks that he should be number one at Man United and he should be number one at a Premier League club. So he's gonna be pushing for that. It may be that it ends up being a loan deal to Newcastle rather than something permanent, but I can't see him staying at Old Trafford. It just might be one of those that takes a little bit longer to come about. If he does move, it might be to Newcastle, might be somewhere else, but it might be one of those that takes a little bit longer to come about while Man United sort their other more pressing transfer issues out first.
Yeah, a lot of talk in the chat about one man and woman in particular. L. Stapleton says, do you think Ekatike will sign or not? Craig Elrington says, hi Ross, have you seen the news about Ekatike having second thoughts about signing for us again? Blue Rhythm Boy again says, is Ekatike joining? And if so, is it a good move for us? Lots of people talking about that today, and again, just keeping an eye on the the news feeds about Newcastle United. There seemed to be a lot more positivity yesterday than there is today, although Craig Hope still seems to be quite keen on the situation. Obviously, from the Daily Mail, he feels that that deal is still possible. Newcastle are still hopeful of signing Ekitike. The structure and the fees and the terms are still being discussed. A loan plus obligation to buy was mooted, which was a way of delaying financial fair play restrictions, he said, but it will be a permanent deal. So still a lot of positivity coming from Craig Hope, mate, and he's usually on the money, Craig, I've got to be perfectly honest. What's your take on the potential £36 million signing and bringing a striker in, which is what we all know we need?
Yeah, I mean, the Ekitike one is something obviously that I tried in January, even tried really hard in January to get him signed. So he's clearly a player that that they've scouted for a while. Something that's come about, really recently. He's someone that's been on the radar for a little while, and we're keen to get that deal done in January. It didn't happen for a couple of reasons. But they've always been backing from. They've always been keen to get this one pushed through in the summer. I don't know too much about the ins and outs of that deal, if I'm being honest. But I'll kind of repeat what you're saying. If Hope's saying it, and Craig's one of the Newcastle journalists who I've got a lot of respect for. I think he gets some great stories. He's very rarely not on the money. He's very rarely wrong with anything. So I would, if Craig's saying that it's close or it's nearing completion or that there's negotiations taking place, and I'd certainly believe Craig on that front. He's a talented player. I think he's that kind of profile that Newcastle probably need is a young, talented, hungry player who's not right at that kind of top echelon of players, not in that elite level, but with no Champions League football, with no European football to offer players, you're gonna, the top level players, you're gonna have to look in a slightly different market. So he is very, very highly rated. We've seen, I suppose the caveat is that we've seen highly rated French players come to Newcastle before and not quite fit the bill. Your Torvans and your Cabellas and one or two others. So you always have to take it with a dose of realism that coming from the French league isn't always the easiest step up for some players, and certainly for young players, different country and playing in a different league. But he's very, very highly rated, very exciting player. So I think that I think he'd be a fantastic addition if we can get that one sorted.
Yeah, I mean, the other name again that won't go away and was there in January is Botman. Not much news on Botman, I've got to be perfectly honest. And again, a lot of the journalists today saying that Newcastle are certainly still looking to do deals for Sven Botman and Matt Targett, despite a bit of negativity around that story last week. Suggesting that maybe family didn't want to move up north, and maybe that Matt Targett was keen on the move, but family weren't. But still seems as if that is one that they want to get over the line as well. But Botman, I think that would be a great signing. I mean, I think I said last week my ideal transfer window would see a goalkeeper come in, whether that's Henderson or somebody else. I'd love to bring in Botman. Because I do rate him. I think he's a good player. I think he would play well alongside Dan Burn as well. I think that would give us a really solid back four. Two good centre halves, both who complement each other. I'd love to sign Lodi as well, the full back, and potentially that centre forward berth, taken by somebody like Ekitike, and ideally a centre midfield player. Whether it's a Phillipson or whether it's a James Ward-Prowse, somebody who can come in and hit the ground running at Premier League level. That would be my ideal window this time round. So, yeah, Botman and Targett. What's your thoughts on that?
So first and foremost is that I suppose we don't know what the budget's like. There's various reports on what the transfer budget is, and I don't think I don't tend to think that any of the reports will probably be 100% accurate, because I think there'll probably be a little bit of wiggle room, and there'll be some money thrown into the pot depending on player sales and everything else like that. So it could, it could be anything. I think it will be sizable, and I do think that, I think I've said before on this show we used to, that I think the transfer record will certainly be broken this summer. For whoever it is, I'm not quite sure. The interesting thing is for me is that if there's, let's just pull a figure out of thin air, and let's say it's 100 million. Okay, let's say that's the budget this summer. Eddie Howe doesn't want that 100 million spent on 2 players. Doesn't want that 100 million spent on 3 players. He wants to spread the signings around, is the best of my knowledge. He wants to strengthen his squad in a few areas. He doesn't just want 2 massive name players and to fill 2 holes, and then he might be left a little bit lighter in other areas. So they're going to have to manage that budget fairly carefully, rather than just splurging it on a centre forward, or splurging it all on a centre half and a goalkeeper. He wants to spread it around and strengthen in various different departments. So, and again, I think his priorities, from what I've heard, are the left back situation and centre half, with possibly with obviously a forward in there as well. So, yeah, to answer your question, the centre half and the left back are 2 key areas. Botman, I think, is a really, again, a real player that they like at Newcastle, and that all the people involved that go into making the deal, the decision makers, the scouting team, the management, the whoever's doing the negotiations, and whether that's a Dan Ashworth, who I'm sure will come on to it, or it's Amanda Stabley or whoever. They all like Botman, and they all think that's a deal that they'd like to get done. But obviously, AC Milan are probably in pole position at the minute. But until they get a no, then I think that's one that they'll keep chasing. I said last week on Matt Target, I'm just not convinced it's a deal that's going to happen. I might be wrong, and I hope I am wrong, because I think he's done an excellent job, and he's available at a decent price, and he's somebody who knows the Premier League and now knows the club as well. So I think it would be a really good signing. I'm just not convinced it's one that's going to happen, and I can't really explain why I'm not convinced. Just little things around it, just on-film is full of confidence. But I wouldn't be surprised if neither of those players were at Newcastle come the start of the season.
Yeah. Okay. As always, we give a shout out to our sponsors at this time, and it's a big thank you as always to Spider Miner. Worldwide coverage from Gareth, Nathan and the lads. The only cryptocurrency miner that can mine 5 different cryptocurrencies at the same time whilst using virtually no energy, and it's VPN protected. Buy yours now at www.miner.spidervpn.org. Thanks also to the guys at skipsandbins.com, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website www.skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to the lads at L&G Family Funeral Directors, 0191 389 7245, and a Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD, hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.thegohd.com. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Walls and Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. And thanks also to ClearEye. Meet the new Game Over screen, drop into a ClearRun device near you, available on Apple Store, Google Play, and clearrun.game. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with video work. If you want to subscribe to the channel, then hit the subscription button, which is the Newcastle Legends badge in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can subscribe for free. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to leave a question or to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans. We are on 7 days a week throughout the close season. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and the rest. Simply go there 24 hours after the show has been on YouTube if you want to catch up. If you want to become a member, you can join by hitting the join button directly underneath this video, or you can take out a better option, which is the NUFC Matters membership pack. And you get a cup, a pen, a scarf, a membership card, and entry into the NUFC Matters membership draw. And in a couple of weeks' time, we're giving away a season ticket for the Platinum Club or a cash equivalent, which is £1,000. So big thank you to qtechshop.co.uk for that. Become a member if you want to be in that draw. And I believe there's 140 members of the NUFC Matters cult at this moment in time. That's good odds in that draw to win a season ticket, to get yourself involved. NUFC Matters also give away a car sticker. If you subscribe, that's free. You just need to email john@nufcmatters.com to claim your free car sticker. Don't forget the food bank. Rely on deposits virtually. The matchday bucket is still operational 365 days of the year. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk is where you go to make a virtual deposit. Our end of season do is at Shearer's Bar, and it is Mick Lowes and Andy Griffin on Friday the 24th of June. Doors are at 7 o'clock. Entry only tickets are £12. VIP £15. Get yourself along. It's going to be a cracker night. Doors are 7 o'clock, and you can buy your tickets today from nufcmatters.com. We've also got the Shearer Ball still up for grabs. Tickets still available. $2.99 a ticket. Get yourself to nufcmatters.com, and you could be the lucky winner of a signed Alan Shearer limited edition 260 ball. And I've mentioned this a couple of times, but this is to raise money for St. Bede's Palliative Care Unit at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, who looked after my mother in her final days. Richard John Taylor, the director, is coming up. He came up with a suggestion of doing a screening. It's a £5 ticket. You can buy them at nufcmatters.com. Come along and see the craze Gangsters Behind Bars at the Irish Club in the concert room Saturday the 11th of June. And as I say, all proceeds going to the palliative care unit at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. John from QTech and Chris Hall did buy some tickets. I'm not sure how many's left, but if you want to claim a free ticket, they have already paid the money to me, and we pass that on to the charity. So if you want to come along to that, there are a few free tickets you can claim. Just email john@nufcmatters.com to claim your free tickets today. And don't forget, you can still vote for your player of the season, which we will announce tomorrow night. And the last time I heard it was a resounding runaway. I'm not sure who it is, but John knows. So get your votes in if you want to change that. That will be announced tomorrow night on the Three Amigos show. And if you haven't caught up with this yet, George Mitchell, our most experienced panelist, I like to call him, was on his own show this week. Those were the days. We look back at the 1950-51 season. So pop onto that on the playlist. George Mitchell did a fantastic job on that show, and looking forward to looking at the next season with him. And the Sam Fender t-shirt was at £200 last I looked. It's pinned at the top of my Twitter profile at Steve Wraith. Sam Fender will sign the t-shirt. All proceeds for that, of course, will be going to NUFC Food Bank. And in case I forget at the end of the programme, it's a big happy birthday, Mom, to the Queen. She had a Trooping of the Colour today, and obviously Jubilee celebrations tomorrow, where we've all scored for a bank holiday, haven't we? So it's been good. I like to watch the pomp and the pageantry, etc., and I'm sure that many of you do. And I hope she has a good day. 70 years on the throne. Wow. Quite an incredible achievement. Okay, back to your questions. John Askew is in with this one. He says, Ross, do you think other Premier League clubs will up their games in the transfer window in view of the extra competition we now provide for European placings?
I think it's going to be a really big summer for transfers in the Premier League, regardless of Newcastle's involvement. You look at the top six. Man City have already signalled their intent with Erling Haaland. Liverpool are going to have to do some business, because it looks like they'll be losing Sadio Mane at least. Maybe they'll probably need another forward brought in, and maybe freshen up the midfield a little bit as well. Chelsea with a new billionaire owner coming in, and the squad rebuild that they need to do, they're going to be spending big money, I'm sure. Spurs with Conte are going to have to spend money just to keep him happy. He's not going to hang around if he's not given some resources to work with. And they've just had a £150 million cash injection from their owners as well. So you can expect them to spend big. Arsenal were the biggest spenders of I think last season anyhow, and they're going to have to strengthen their squad again and go again. So there's your top five, and then you've got Man United, who, as we talked about earlier, they've got a massive, probably the biggest squad rebuild of anybody this summer. So that top six are going to spend big money, I'm sure, between them. It could be incredible amounts. You throw in Newcastle into that, and one or two others. Villa's transfer business has already been well noted and really impressive, I think, so far. So there's going to be a lot of money spent this summer. It could be one of the most exciting transfer windows the Premier League's seen, and from a Newcastle perspective, certainly the most exciting that we've seen in the last 10-15 years potentially.
Do you think Dan Ashworth could be the big signing of this summer?
Yeah, he could be. He could be. It's a really important deal. It's interesting that they've managed to negotiate his release early from his Brighton gardening leave. So they're obviously very keen to get him in before the transfer window really kicks off, so he can play his role. His role at the club's going to have a wider remit than just transfers. He's going to be looking at a heck of a lot more than just signings, but that'll obviously be an immediate focus for him. I think this could be a really, again, we could go back we could look back in a few years' time and look back at Dan Ashworth coming in and saying, look, that was an incredible piece of business. You need to have the right people in the right roles in and around the club, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch, behind the scenes work in these key areas. You see it at all the top clubs. They've got stellar professionals in these really high end, top level director roles. Newcastle have had it in the past, again, back to the Keegan era, when you had your Freddie Fletchers and the likes, pulling the strings and people who did a lot of the top end work behind the scenes. Dan Ashworth is very highly regarded within football, and for Newcastle to get him to St James's Park, I think is a bit of a coup, to be honest.
Yeah. John says, get Joe Aribo and Alfredo Morelos before your rivals snap them up. Sean says Ake and Zinchenko are up for grabs, centre back and versatile left back. What's your thoughts on that quartet that have just been thrown at us by the chat?
I wouldn't touch the two Rangers guys. I wouldn't touch Aribo or Morelos. I don't. Not for me. I've watched them both a fair bit over the years. Not players who I think would improve Newcastle's squad. So no, not for me. Ake is an interesting one. You can see why it's an obvious link, I suppose. He's played for Eddie Howe before at Bournemouth. He's a left-sided centre half. You can see why he's capable of playing left back as well. You can see why he would be. He would be someone who would be linked with Newcastle. And Zinchenko, as we talked about before, I thought was outstanding last night for Ukraine. He's obviously a very good footballer. Those two are, I suppose, with Zinchenko and Ake, if you were looking at it from a player's perspective, are you going to go from Man City to Newcastle at this point in time? They both a fair bit of football at Man City this season. They've got Champions League. They just won the Premier League title. Are you going to drop from City to Newcastle at this point in your career when Newcastle are where they are? I think it's maybe a little bit too soon for that. So I'd be surprised if they'd come. I would certainly take Zinchenko.
Yeah, Don says with Dan Ashworth shows the owners are getting the best possible football people into the back room. I would agree. If we don't get Botman, what about this lad Jules Koundé? Says John Burbeck.
Oh, you'd be lucky. You'd be very lucky. Again, a high end player, really top quality. world class player. I think he'll have his pick of his clubs if he leaves Spain, and I think Newcastle would be further down the pecking order. It'd be great if they could attract somebody like him, and never say never. But I know he's been very, very close with Chelsea in the past. Obviously, Carlos has left there as well, Sevilla as well. So whether they're going to let both centre halves go is a different matter. But I think Newcastle would be very fortunate to get somebody like him.
Gary's saying, why has nobody mentioned Maddison as a possible signing? He says, I know you've mentioned him, Steve, but no one else. But, it's somebody who I would like, Gary. I don't think any Leicester players of any quality would be looking to jump ship from Leicester just at the moment. I think we need European football before we start bringing in, players of that quality. I've got to be honest. I mean, Trippier took a gamble. I'm not sure, other people would, but we'll wait and see. George says, can we appoint Johnny Depp and all his treasures? Because all his treasures would help us deal with financial fair play. Yeah, Johnny Depp in town last night. Couldn't have scripted that, could you?
That was incredible, wasn't it? Incredible. You saw social media just light up last night with him and Sam Fender. That's the mental world of Newcastle as a city, not just the football club. The mental world of Newcastle is the city. They're probably the most high profile and talked about person in the world at this point in time. Just happens to be sat on the quayside when his court case is announced. So incredible story.
£8.5 million into his bank account. He didn't even buy a round. Dear me, it tells you all you need to know. Roy says, not many strikers available, really. I had hope for Patrick Schick before he signed a new contract with his current club. Yeah, strikers are a hard thing to find, Roy, 100%. Tom asks a couple of questions. He said, would you take anybody from Manchester United, Ross, first of all?
Yeah, I would. I would take, I think I'd take Lingard. I do think I'd take a gamble on Lingard. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea. And I totally understand why, but I would, on a free, I would take a gamble on Lingard. There's a couple of other players there that if they became available, I would look at. None of the, you look at some of the ones that have been released. Obviously, Pogba's moving on a free. He's going to end up either Juventus or Paris Saint-Germain. You would have thought, and I don't think I would be tempted with Pogba anyhow. He's a world class player. I just don't think he'd fit in with Newcastle's philosophy and ethos at the minute. Same Juan Matters, his better days are behind him. Still a fantastic player. I know I mentioned him a few weeks ago on this show. I really like Marcus Rashford. I think he's had a really bad time. I don't think he'd ever come. I don't think he's going to come this summer, and I don't think Man United will leave him. But if he did become available, I think he'd be the type of player I would certainly be interested in. But again, I think that's too early for Newcastle in this state of progression and development. Dean Henderson and Lingard, I think I wouldn't be surprised for those two to end up from Man United at Newcastle.
Yeah. Tom also says, how do you think England will do in their group? It looks like a tough group.
I say I love that. This is probably going to split opinion as well, but I love the Nations League. I like watching England, and this Nations League just adds a little bit something different to what we're just dull friendlies. Who've we got? We've got Hungary, Italy, and Germany. To play. You're playing Italy, you're playing Germany. They're two massive games. If you can't get up for those as an England player or as an England fan, then it's a little bit disappointing. But I'm really looking forward to them. I think there could be great games. I'll certainly watch them. I know England games don't appeal to everybody, but I'm excited by them. I like watching England. I like Gareth Southgate. I like what he does. I like his philosophy. He's a really, really good bloke, and I think he's a decent coach as well. Who got England to a semi-final and a final, and still gets pelters from people. You wonder how much he's got to do before he gets a little bit more respect. But I think he's a cracking. But I wouldn't be surprised, a bit on a side note here. I wouldn't be surprised if Southgate at one point ends up in some sort of role at Newcastle. I'm just been thinking off the top of my head there. I wouldn't be surprised. He lives fairly close. He lives just down in North Yorkshire, not a million miles away. Him and Ashworth have worked. Dan Ashworth have worked together. I'm not saying he would come in as manager at Newcastle or anything else like that, but I just wonder. He's probably only got a couple of years left at England. He might stay with the FA or something, but I just wonder if there's some sort of director of football type of role, or some sort of backroom type role once he's finished with England and the FA that he might move into at Newcastle. Yeah, I've gone off on a tangent there.
No, always interesting. It's always interesting. We'll definitely clip that if it happens, Ross. in the future, you heard it here first. Tom Lynch, I doubt he'll be going to Wearside for a pint, mate. I think he'll be long gone now. He'll be back on the road wherever Jeff Beck is. He'll be at tonight. Lewandowski on a free. Says Vince Smith, another name which keeps getting bandied around and gets people excited. But again, I think that the lure of Champions League football would be what he would be looking for, certainly next season. And we can't offer him that, Ross.
No, we can't. It'd be great. Even to be in the conversation for these types of players is incredible, these days. But yeah, that's never going to happen, is it, unfortunately?
No. John says, so Ross, why does Ekatike and his agent not want to move? And do you think Newcastle will get another striker? I mean, it's not been reported that he doesn't want to move, John. We always err on the side of caution on this show. Be careful who you follow and what you read is the honest opinion. And there's some journalists, will just clutch at straws. But, there's a lot of good local journalists. Give them a follow on Twitter. They'll be able to help guide you. So, it looks more positive than that, mate. I'm pretty sure we will get him over the line. Ant says Lingard wants a load of dosh so he can jog on. John says Pogba's a bad apple with too much ego. Matter is past his best. He's the kind of character that you would want, though, says Blue Rhythm Boy. Lingard could be a bad influence within the dressing room, although no doubting his quality, says Mark Law. And Vince says, yes. How we'll look at his attitude. John Beck says, you lot signed Woods from Burnley, yet you totally disrespect Alfredo Morelos. Who would you get who could score 25 goals a season? We don't disrespect him, John.
Morelos doesn't score 25 goals a season for bloody Rangers, does he? In the Scottish League, so he's not got 25 goals in the Premier League for me. Absolutely not. No disrespect to him. He's obviously he's a talented player, but not for me in the. If you're pushing to be a top 8 Premier League club.
Mm-hmm. I agree with John on this point. He says just because you've got all the dough doesn't mean you need to break the bank for a top player. Yeah, and that's the kind of business that we did in January is the kind of business we will be doing now. We're aiming at better quality, John, says Vince Smith. And Jeff Beck is at the stage tonight. All right, I thought he might have been on last night. But so Johnny Depp should still be in town then. Who was the first Colombian to play at St James's Park? What, for Newcastle, John? It has to be Tino, doesn't it?
I can't think of anybody else unless he's me and somebody who's played at St James's for the opposition. But in terms of pulling on the black and white shirt, it must be Tino, isn't it?
Yeah, got to be. Jeff is your uncle. Well, I hope he has a good gig, John. Good luck to him. 25 in this Scottish Premier League. However, man, Mitrovic could get 45 in the SPL. And yeah, and I don't want Mitrovic either. Honestly, I don't. This is an interesting one. Complete fantasy island, I feel. Gareth Bale on a pay-as-you-play deal. I think PIF would like to do that. He's a big name. Tom Dixon says, what about Gareth Bale, Ross?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. What do you think, Steve, on this kind of big name thing? Because that was bandied around when the takeover first happened, and with the raising the profile in Saudi Arabia and everything else like that. Do you think that that PIF and the ownership want a stellar superstar big name that they can help promote the club further afield than just England? Or do you think that they're a bit more savvy in that and just want to build something over a period of time and get the right ethos? Or is there room for both? I'm not sure on it myself, to be honest.
Before they bought the club, the conversations I had were that it would be a structured budget. So, they would go in, they knew that they would have to make big changes, off the pitch, training facilities, ground, internal at the club. But they knew that, transfers would be very important as well. And obviously this was, 3 years ago now that we're talking. And I see exactly what they laid out. The blueprint was always going to be, a comfortable spend in the January and summer windows, so 100 million in each windows. I expect, in and around that figure. Obviously, if they sell somebody, that money gets put into the pot as well. But I think it'll be strict and it'll be budgeted and it'll be done properly. And I don't think they will be bringing in, ridiculous signings, marquee signings. I don't think we'll be going to, the top 6 and getting that cast-offs, which is what we did, quite a lot of in the Shepherd and Hall era, which at the time was, it seemed as if it was good business, but eventually it leads to, the club falling behind and then eventually being relegated, which is what happened, and failure to get European football, because as you start signing other players cast-offs, you're falling into that, falling into that category of also rans. So you've got a situation where Chelsea gave us Damien Duff. He was past his best. He didn't play well at Newcastle, and we don't want to go down that route. I mean, one or two players you could probably pick out and say, well, we got a decent deal there. Keith Gillespie coming from Man United was a decent deal. Obviously we lost Andy Cole, but a lot of these players that are cast-offs from other clubs, they're never good enough. And we're not in that kind of market anymore. And I think we will do business, and we'll do business sensibly. I think there will be one or two big names come, and but it won't be. If the likes of Gareth Bale comes to Newcastle, I would be very surprised. No matter how many shirts it sells, Ekitike, that's somebody exciting. That's a marquee signing. It's 36 to 39 million pound, young lad, highly rated. And if he gets off to the start that he should get off to in this league, then that'll sell enough shirts in its own right. But the players we brought in January, because the club has been starved of transfer activity, really, these, you could bring anybody in, almost anybody at the moment, and the fans would be excited. And you said it twice today already. It's just great to be talking about these players. It's great to be involved. And we're at such a low ebb as a fan base still, and a lot of us are still scratching our heads and looking at this and going, oh, God, is this really real? We're still expecting to wake up and Mike Ashley still to be in charge. We're just gonna enjoy it, So, like you have, you go all around the houses to answer the question, but at times, but I just genuinely think that Newcastle will stick to their strict budget. There won't be held to ransom. The players that come in will be on a structured wage with incentives for wins and goals and performances, whatever. And I think this is the way they'll do it. I think it's a marquee signing which isn't going to happen, and that's Gareth Bale, which is the original question. So it's like Michael Owen, isn't it? It's like when that was the big marquee signing. Didn't want to be here, didn't want to come, but it was an exciting signing that was there to generate headlines as much as anything else. You can see why owners are sometimes tempted to go down that route, but it just doesn't feel like that's what PIF and everybody involved at the club are kind of building into. It doesn't feel like that's the kind of Eddie Howe philosophy either, of bringing in, he's going to want proper characters, going to want people who have done their homework on and that sort of thing. The other thing I would just say though is that, and it hasn't happened yet, but it will happen at some point, they won't get every signing absolutely right. They won't. Every signing that comes in isn't going to hit the ground running, isn't going to be a success. That's just football. That's just life. You're not going to get, Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger, Mourinho, the best managers you can name in the world don't get every signing right, every recruitment decision right. So there is going to be some missteps along the way, and we just have to accept that for what it is. But as long as the kind of standard philosophy is right, and the working to a structure and the working to a plan, then that's all you can ask for. Yeah, James Tavernier, John, is an ex-Newcastle player, of course. It is one I've often looked at. I mean, I'm a Rangers man myself as well as Newcastle. I do enjoy watching Rangers play. Do I think he could cut it in the Premier League? Probably yes, now I do. Are we looking at somebody in his in his position, no, I don't think we are. I don't think that's an area we need to strengthen. But do I think he's capable of doing something in the Premier League? Of course I do, and I think he'd love it back in Newcastle. But we did cast him off, so I'm not 100% sure that that kind of thing is again in the eyesight of the owners. I think there'll be lots. But Botman and Lodi alone is 100 million gone, says Andy. Yeah, I mean, it's just good to be linked with these players. It's what Ross said before. It's just nice to be able to sit here, on a summer's evening and talk about these players potentially coming to Newcastle. Two preseason friendlies organised, Ross, obviously both at home, back-to-back games, which is great for the fans. It's hopefully going to give a few people who may not get the opportunity to go to St James's Park for league games this season an opportunity to see the team play pre-season, which is great.
Oh, fantastic. Really, really pleased when those games were announced. I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago or last week, Steve, about getting those pre-season friendlies in its home. We've had your Juventuses and the likes at St James's over in the not too distant past. So the good standard of teams as well, good caliber of opposition. But you always like to have at least one, hopefully a couple of pre-season friendlies at home, because again, it just whets the appetite a little bit more for the new season. You get to see new signings and the team in play. The other thing I'd like to see, which I thought was a really good initiative that was done a few years ago. I can't remember how many years ago it is now, but the open training sessions at St James's as well, when they did that, and again, stick it on in the school holidays, let the kids in for free, watch an hour and a half training session on the pitch. I thought they were really, really good initiatives back in the day, and it would be nice to see something like that in place again. But two pre-season friendlies at home's an excellent idea.
Yeah, and if you didn't know, we are playing Atlanta on Friday, July the 29th, 7:45 kickoff. And then we play a Spanish team, Atletico Bilbao, on Saturday, July the 30th. The kickoff for that one, though, is to be confirmed. And I think everybody is looking forward to them. Thanks, obviously, to everybody in the chat, as always. So we have plenty of questions, and hope we gave you a few answers tonight. And thanks to everybody who's been moderating as well. Always good to have you guys in there, making sure that we don't get anybody in there being naughty, but very good to have all that. Nicholas will give you the last comment. He says, just great to have our football team back competing. That's all I want. Trophies are welcome bonus, but NUFC has its soul back. And I think we can both agree with that, mate.
Oh, 100%. It's, I've said it a few times now, great to have these conversations. Great that the joy and the excitement is in the club again. Everybody's excited going into the summer, and looking forward to seeing who comes into the club and how the team manages to kick on next season.
Yep, don't forget, we are back tomorrow night, 5:30, and it is the Three Amigos, and Keith Patterson will be back tomorrow night as well, 5:30 till 7:30, with all your usual favourites. If you are doing something tomorrow for the Jubilee, make sure you enjoy yourselves, have a great time, and Ross, look forward to having you back next week, mate. Take care, enjoy your weekend.
Cheers, Steve. Cheers, everyone.